The first time Vivian Hart saw Daniel Hayes's laptop, she asked if it had survived the same decade as his work boots. It sat on a cart inside Hangar 4 of Heartline Aviation, thick, black, scratched at the corners, with a missing hinge cover and silver tape holding the charging cable at the only angle where it still worked. Beside it lay a handheld vibration probe, a coil of diagnostic wire, and a child's drawing of a jet with orange wings taped carefully to the inside of the case. Daniel stood next to the cart in a faded navy mechanic's shirt, hands marked with hydraulic fluid, hair damp from the morning fog. His 8-year-old daughter Lily sat on a folding chair near the parts cage, hugging her backpack to her chest and watching the room with the quiet attention of a child who had learned when not to interrupt adults. Vivian crossed the polished hangar floor with 6 people behind her: 2 senior engineers, a flight operations manager, a client representative, and her assistant, Claire. They were walking toward the $70 million private jet waiting under white lights near the open hangar doors, its silver body shining so cleanly that the concrete beneath it looked expensive. Vivian stopped when she saw the laptop. "What is that?" she asked. Daniel looked at the machine, then back at her. "My diagnostic system." One of the engineers laughed under his breath. Another looked away, smiling. Vivian tilted her head. She was 36 years old, sharp, elegant, and known in private aviation circles for making powerful men feel like they had arrived 5 minutes late to their own meeting. She had built Heartline Aviation into a charter and aircraft management company trusted by people who paid for silence as much as speed. She looked at Daniel's laptop again. "That looks like something a middle school throws away after a budget meeting." A few people laughed because she was Vivian Hart, and people around Vivian often laughed before deciding whether the joke was kind. Daniel did not. He put one hand on the laptop lid, not defensively, but carefully, as if the machine deserved more respect than the room was offering it. "It reads what the built-in systems ignore," he said. Vivian smiled. "Then perhaps it can read why a maintenance contractor brought his daughter into my hangar before a certification flight." Lily looked down at her shoes. Daniel's expression changed only slightly. "Her school lost power this morning. I asked to reschedule. Operations said the final check had to be done today. And your solution was to bring a child and a museum piece computer into a $70 million aircraft release." Daniel's voice stayed calm. "My solution was to finish the inspection properly." Vivian looked toward the jet, then back at him. "The aircraft has already cleared 2 electronic checks and a manufacturer-authorized review. We need signatures, not experiments." Daniel said nothing. Vivian turned to the engineers. "Please use approved equipment. We are not delaying a VIP handoff because someone's old laptop has feelings." 4 hours later, the same jet would sit locked at the end of the runway with emergency vehicles surrounding it, fuel pressure warnings flashing across the cockpit, and 3 certified systems unable to explain why the left engine had nearly surged during taxi. The client would be demanding answers. The flight crew would be pale. Vivian Hart would stand inside the hangar, no longer smiling, while the only man who had noticed the problem before the airplane moved was the one she had mocked in front of his daughter. Heartline Aviation did not sell ordinary travel. It sold certainty. Its clients wanted the cabin lit, the route filed, the engine smooth, and the doors closed on time. Vivian understood that better than anyone. She inherited the company at 29, grieving and underestimated, then turned it into a private aviation brand known for flawless releases and controlled rooms. That discipline had kept Heartline alive. It had also taught her to mistake polish for reliability. Daniel Hayes had once worked in a place where polish meant almost nothing. For 9 years, he had been an avionics and propulsion diagnostic technician for a manufacturer's flight test division, sitting beside test stands at impossible hours, listening to engines through microphones, heat sensors, vibration traces, and data streams most executives never saw. He learned that machines were honest, but not always loud. They whispered first. His wife, Rachel, used to joke that Daniel could hear a failing bearing from the grocery aisle. Rachel died 3 years earlier after a sudden aneurysm on a Tuesday morning that had begun so normally Daniel still hated Tuesdays. Lily was 5 then. Daniel left the test division because travel became impossible and because every hotel room reminded him he was missing bedtime. He took contract diagnostic work around Arden Field, accepted jobs below his experience, and built his life around school schedules, rent, and the small routines that helped Lily feel the world had not completely changed shape. The laptop came from those test division years. Inside it ran software Daniel had built over nearly a decade: vibration analysis, fuel pressure comparison, thermal pattern matching, and anomaly detection based on raw sensor behavior rather than polished system summaries. Modern tools told technicians what an aircraft wanted them to see. Daniel's laptop asked what the aircraft was trying not to admit. He had kept it because it had saved him more than once. That morning, Lily's school lost power after a transformer blew near the elementary building. Daniel tried calling 3 neighbors. One was at work, one was sick, one did not answer. Lily stood in the kitchen with her backpack on, trying not to look hopeful because she knew hope could make things harder. "I can sit quietly," she said. "You shouldn't have to come to the hangar." "I like hangars." "You like the vending machine." "I like both." Daniel almost smiled. He brought her because the final check at Heartline could not be moved, and because contract workers who canceled too often stopped getting called. Lily sat in the truck on the way there, drawing a jet with orange wings because she said plain wings looked lonely. The aircraft waiting in Hangar 4 belonged to a technology billionaire named Malcolm Pierce. It had recently undergone an interior upgrade, avionics refresh, and fuel management service before its handoff flight to Los Angeles. The flight mattered. Pierce's representatives were watching. Heartline wanted his full aircraft management account. Vivian had personally promised a flawless release. The jet looked flawless. Daniel did not trust flawless things until they had been asked the right questions. During the first hour, everything appeared routine. The manufacturer diagnostic suite showed no active faults. Pressure readings stayed within acceptable range. Engine control logs were clean. The 2 senior engineers, Grant Madsen and Joel Price, moved through the checklist with professional ease. Daniel stayed quiet, watching his laptop collect data through a portable interface connected to a maintenance access point. The first anomaly appeared at 8:47. Not a warning, not even an error, a tiny pressure hesitation in the left fuel feed during simulated load transition, shorter than a blink and small enough that the aircraft's own summary smoothed it away. Daniel marked it. At 9:12, it happened again. At 9:38, during a different test sequence, it appeared with a faint vibration shift in the left engine pump housing. Daniel removed one ear cup, listened to the hangar, then replayed the trace. Grant saw him. "Something wrong with your antique." Daniel did not look up. "Maybe." Joel laughed. The aircraft passed the authorized suite. The suite is reading averaged behavior. That is usually how systems avoid chasing noise. Daniel enlarged the trace. Sometimes noise is the first honest part. Grant walked over, glanced at the screen and shook his head. "That is not actionable." "It is if it repeats under taxi load." "We are not delaying taxi for a contractor's homemade graph." Lily heard that from the folding chair. She looked at Daniel. He did not react. At 10:05, Vivian entered with Malcolm Pierce's client representative, a narrow-faced man named Evan Rusk, whose suit fit like a threat. Evan had already mentioned that Mr. Pierce disliked uncertainty. Vivian had smiled and assured him uncertainty was what Heartline removed. Grant told her the aircraft was ready for taxi clearance. Daniel said, "I recommend a hold." The hangar went quiet. Vivian turned. "On what basis?" "Left fuel feed pressure is showing a transient drop during load simulation. It is brief, but it has repeated 3 times and correlates with vibration change at the pump housing." Grant exhaled. "It is within range." Daniel said, "The average is within range." Joel added, "No fault codes, no system advisory, no manufacturer lockout. This is a release check, not a research project." Vivian looked at the old laptop, then at Evan Rusk, then at the jet. There are moments when a leader can choose curiosity or control. Curiosity feels slower. Control feels safer. Vivian chose the feeling she knew. "Document the observation," she said. "Proceed with approved taxi check." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I would not put passengers on that aircraft yet." Evan Rusk looked sharply at Vivian. "Is there a safety concern?" Vivian answered before Daniel could. "There is a difference between a concern and a contractor being overly cautious with unofficial equipment." Daniel looked at her then, and for a second she saw not embarrassment, not defiance, but the exhausted patience of a man watching someone walk toward a hole he had already pointed out. "Ms. Hart," he said, "if the left feed drops under acceleration, the system may compensate late. If that happens in the air, you will wish it happened on the ground." Grant's face hardened. "That is an irresponsible statement." "No," Daniel said, "it is an inconvenient one." Vivian stepped closer. "Mr. Hayes, you are here under contract. I respect caution. I do not respect disruption packaged as expertise. Stand down from the release." Lily lowered her head. Daniel looked at his daughter, then at the jet. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He disconnected the laptop and began packing his cables. The taxi check began at 11:16. Daniel and Lily were in the employee lot when the jet rolled out. He had been told he was free to leave and that purchasing would process his partial invoice after review. That meant late payment, maybe no future calls, maybe another week of numbers he would need to make work. Lily climbed into the truck but did not close the door. "Dad." "Yeah." "Was the plane sick?" Daniel looked across the ramp. The jet gleamed in the sun as it moved toward the taxiway. "I think so." "Then why are they flying it?" "They are trying not to hear it." Lily looked down at her drawing. "Maybe planes get scared when people don't listen." Daniel did not answer because the thought was too close to something else. At 11:31, the aircraft stopped near the runway hold point. At 11:32, the cockpit reported a left engine fuel pressure fluctuation during throttle advancement. At 11:33, the flight crew aborted the taxi sequence. At 11:35, an engine vibration advisory appeared, followed by a fuel imbalance warning the system could no longer smooth away. Emergency vehicles rolled. Vivian received the call while standing in the client lounge beside Evan Rusk. He was explaining that Mr. Pierce expected the Los Angeles departure to remain on schedule. Her phone vibrated. She listened. Her face did not change, but Claire saw her fingers tighten around the phone. When Vivian returned to Hangar 4, the jet was being towed back slowly. The engines were off. Grant and Joel moved toward the aircraft with tablets in hand, their confidence visibly reduced but not gone. "What happened?" Vivian asked. Grant said, "Transient fuel pressure fault on left feed, possible sensor issue." Daniel's words moved through her memory with terrible precision. "If the left feed drops under acceleration, the system may compensate late." Evan Rusk arrived behind her. Ms. Hart, we are investigating. You told me this was unofficial caution. She did not answer quickly enough. By 12:10, the manufacturer suite had pulled the new fault but could not identify root cause. The fuel pressure behavior appeared, disappeared, then appeared again depending on load state. The sensor passed individual checks. The pump controller passed its self-test. The system insisted each component was acceptable while the aircraft as a whole kept proving it was not. Grant looked more frustrated with each minute. Joel suggested replacing the sensor. Darren, the flight operations manager, asked how long that would take. 3 hours if parts are on site, Joel said. And if the sensor is not the problem? No one answered. Vivian stood under the wing, looking at the aircraft she had promised would depart smoothly. Evan Rusk was on the phone in the lounge. A $70 million jet, an expansion account, and Heartline's reputation were now balanced on a problem the approved systems could see only after it had become undeniable. Claire stepped beside her. You need to call him. Vivian did not pretend not to know who she meant. He may have left. He warned you. He also made a claim based on unofficial software. Claire looked at the jet. And then reality supported him. Vivian turned toward her. Claire held the look. Good assistants know when to stop being convenient. Vivian walked to her office and called Daniel Hayes. He did not answer the first time. He was at a diner 6 miles from the airport because Lily had asked for pancakes, and he could not say no after she had watched adults mock him all morning. His phone buzzed beside the syrup container. He saw Heartline Aviation on the screen and let it ring. Lily noticed. Is it the plane? Probably. Are you going to answer? He looked out the window at the gray road and the low airport buildings beyond it. I'm deciding. The phone rang again. Lily pushed his phone gently toward him. Mom said helping is not the same as forgetting. Daniel looked at her. She said that when you were mad at Mr. Keller for denting your toolbox. He remembered. Rachel sitting on the back step, Lily asleep inside, telling him that being right did not free him from being useful. He answered. Vivian's voice came through controlled, but changed. Mr. Hayes, the aircraft faulted during taxi. I know. A pause. You know. I was listening to ground frequency in the truck. Vivian closed her eyes. Can you return? What changed? The aircraft is showing the behavior you predicted. No, Daniel said. The aircraft was showing it before. Now everyone else believes it. The words were not loud. That made them harder to absorb. Vivian said, I need your help. Daniel looked at Lily. She was watching him with pancake syrup on her sleeve and faith in her eyes he did not always feel he deserved. I'm bringing my daughter. Of course. In my laptop. This time, Vivian did not hesitate. Yes. When Daniel returned, the hangar atmosphere had shifted. Nobody laughed when he set the old laptop back on the maintenance cart. Grant stood with his arms folded, jaw tight. Joel looked embarrassed but not ready to admit it. Vivian stood near the nose of the jet, posture still upright, but the easy certainty was gone. Lily returned to her folding chair. Claire brought her hot chocolate without asking. Daniel connected his system and began pulling raw data from the taxi attempt. For 10 minutes, he said nothing. He moved between the laptop, the access point, the left wing route, and the pump housing. He placed the vibration probe where factory procedure did not require one, then moved it half an inch and ran the trace again. Grant finally said, What are you looking for? Daniel did not stop working. A disagreement. Between what? What the pump says it is doing, and what the fuel pressure says it received. Joel leaned closer despite himself. The graph on Daniel's laptop showed 3 lines, Commanded output measured pressure and vibration frequency. During throttle advancement, the command rose cleanly. The pressure followed, then dipped for less than a second. At that same moment, a narrow vibration spike appeared. "There," Daniel said. Grant squinted. "That could be line resonance." "It could. But you don't think so?" "No." "Why?" Daniel pointed to the spike. "Because resonance would ring. This cuts." Vivian listened from behind them. "Meaning?" Daniel looked toward the aircraft. "Something is interrupting flow mechanically. Not enough to fail a static test, enough to starve under transition." Joel said, "The filter inspection was clean." "I do not think it is the filter." Grant frowned. The pump passed." The pump passed while being asked easy questions. Daniel walked to the left engine area and traced the fuel feed path in the air with his hand. This aircraft had an interior upgrade and fuel management service. "Yes," Grant said. "Was any work done around the auxiliary transfer routing?" Joel checked the tablet. "Software update, valve calibration, no hardware replacement noted." Daniel looked at Vivian. "Who performed the calibration?" "North Axis Maintenance," she said. "They are certified." Daniel nodded once. Certified people can still tighten the wrong thing. The line landed in the hangar like a dropped tool. At 1:22, Daniel asked for panel access beneath the left wing root. Grant objected on procedural grounds. Vivian overruled him. At 1:41, the panel came off. At first, nothing looked wrong. Clean fittings, new tags, no leaks, no obvious damage. Daniel used a mirror, then a small camera, then his hand, reaching carefully behind a brace where visibility was poor. His fingers stopped. "Light." Owen, a junior mechanic, held a lamp. Daniel pointed. "There." A fuel transfer valve actuator had been mounted with a bracket slightly misaligned after calibration work. The misalignment placed pressure on a flexible feed section only when vibration and load shifted the assembly during throttle advancement. At rest, it looked acceptable. Under easy test, it passed. Under transition, it pinched flow for a fraction of a second, just long enough to create pressure interruption and engine instability. It was a quiet flaw. The most dangerous kind. Grant stared at it. That bracket passed visual inspection. Daniel said it was visually installed. Joel swallowed. "If the aircraft had taken off." Daniel did not finish the sentence. "Nobody needed him to." Vivian stood very still. She looked at the bracket, then at Daniel, then at Lily sitting across the hangar with hot chocolate in both hands. She had mocked his laptop. She had mocked his judgment. She had almost put a client in the air above a problem his ugly machine had caught on the ground. Evan Rusk entered at the wrong moment. "Well," he demanded. Vivian turned to him. "We found the flaw." "Is it serious?" "Yes." "Was it missed?" She looked at Daniel. "It was caught," she said, "before it became worse." The repair took 3 hours. The bracket was repositioned, the line inspected, and Daniel's system ran alongside the approved suite. This time the pressure trace held clean. No dip, no cut, no vibration spike. Grant stood beside Daniel during the final run. After a long silence, he said, "Your graph was right." Daniel unplugged a cable. The aircraft was right. The graph just did not smooth it out. Grant absorbed that. "I dismissed it." "Yes." "I should not have." "No." Grant looked toward Lily. "She heard all of it this morning." "Yes," Daniel said. Grant walked over to Lily a few minutes later. He crouched awkwardly, as if he did not often speak to children when not performing for adults. "I was rude about your dad's computer." Lily looked at him carefully. "Yes." Grant seemed to decide he deserved that. I'm sorry. She took a sip of hot chocolate. It's old, but it works. Grant nodded. So does your dad. Lily smiled for the first time all day. The aircraft did not depart that afternoon. Vivian refused to release it until a full independent inspection confirmed the repair, a decision Evan Rusk disliked, until Vivian offered to put in writing that she would not certify a jet for schedule convenience. Malcolm Pierce's office responded 40 minutes later with a short message. We appreciate the caution. Send the full report. That message saved more than the account. It gave Vivian enough silence to think. At 6:20, the hangar had emptied to essential staff. The jet sat quiet under lights. The old laptop remained open on the cart, screen glowing with clean final traces. Lily slept in the folding chair with Claire's jacket over her shoulders. Vivian approached Daniel. I owe you an apology. Daniel looked at the laptop. Yes. She nodded. I made assumptions about you, your equipment, and your daughter being here. Yes. I embarrassed you in front of my team. You did. Vivian took the answers without flinching. And I almost let my need for control overrule a valid warning. Daniel looked at her then. That is the one that matters. Her face changed slightly. I know. He closed the laptop but did not pick it up. Do you? Vivian's first instinct was to defend the complexity of leadership. Clients, timelines, certified processes, reputation, liability. The words lined up in her mind, polished and useless. Instead, she looked at the jet. My father used to say clients buy certainty from us. I think somewhere along the way I confused certainty with refusing to be uncertain. Daniel said nothing. Vivian looked back at him. I am sorry. Lily stirred but did not wake. Daniel's voice softened. She lost her mother. She notices when people make me smaller. Vivian looked at the child in the chair, the backpack at her feet, the drawing of the orange-wing jet now sitting beside the laptop. I know. No, Daniel said, you know now. The difference stayed in the hangar. The next morning, Vivian called a company-wide technical review meeting. Daniel attended only because Claire insisted his invoice would be processed immediately and his presence was requested, not demanded. The room was full. Engineers, operations, safety, client relations, compliance, and senior leadership. The old laptop sat on the table in front of Daniel because Vivian had asked him to bring it. She stood at the front. Yesterday, a release check failed after we ignored a warning. The warning came from Mr. Hayes using a diagnostic system that was not part of our standard release process. I dismissed that warning. I was wrong. No one moved. Vivian did not soften the sentence. We are going to change how technical dissent is handled at Heartline. If someone identifies a plausible safety concern, schedule pressure does not outrank investigation. Presentation does not outrank data. Seniority does not outrank truth. Grant looked down at his hands. Vivian turned to Daniel. I am offering you the position of Director of Independent Diagnostics and Safety Review, full-time, with authority to place temporary holds on aircraft releases pending technical review. You will report to safety, not sales. Compensation above our senior engineering range. Flexible schedule terms to accommodate your daughter. Daniel did not answer immediately. Everyone expected gratitude. Some expected relief. Daniel asked, what happens the first time my hold costs you a client? Vivian was ready for questions about salary, authority, and reporting structure. She was not ready for the one that mattered most. After a moment she said, I will remember yesterday. That won't be enough 6 months from now. Claire almost smiled. Vivian nodded slowly. Then we write the policy so memory is not required. Daniel looked at her. That was the first answer he respected. I will consider it. Lily, sitting beside Claire at the back with a muffin, whispered, That means maybe. Claire whispered back, That is better than no. Over the next 2 weeks, Heartline changed in ways that made some people uncomfortable. Daniel did not accept the position immediately. He reviewed the written authority, rewrote 3 sections, and insisted safety holds could not be overridden without dual sign-off and a permanent record of who accepted risk. Vivian agreed. Grant became one of the policy's strongest supporters. Joel trained under Daniel on raw trace analysis without pretending he liked being taught by a contractor. Then, slowly, he liked it. The old laptop became famous inside the company before Daniel did. 3 months later, the Pierce account signed fully with Heartline. Malcolm Pierce himself asked whether the old laptop guy was still involved in aircraft releases. Vivian answered yes. Pierce said, Good, keep him. 6 months later, Heartline opened a new diagnostics room behind Hangar 4. It was quiet, properly wired, and built around raw data review stations, vibration analysis, thermal monitoring, and independent cross-check systems based partly on Daniel's software. On the wall, Vivian had placed a framed copy of Lily's Orangewing jet drawing. Daniel stopped in the doorway. You framed that. I asked her permission, Vivian said. Below the drawing was a small plaque. Listen before the warning gets loud. Later that day, Lily came after school, saw her drawing on the wall and stood very still. They put my jet, she said. Daniel rested a hand on her shoulder. They did. Vivian pointed to the glass door. Etched into it were the words, The Orangewing Room. Lily read it twice. Mom liked orange. Daniel nodded, unable to speak immediately. Vivian had not known that. She understood from his face that the accident of the color had reached somewhere deeper than branding ever could. From that day on, every aircraft release involving high-value clients passed through independent diagnostics when anything unusual appeared. Most checks found nothing. A few found small problems before they became large ones. Once, Daniel's system caught a hydraulic pump vibration pattern that prevented an ugly delay in Aspen. Another time, it identified a cabin pressure sensor disagreement that saved a client flight from an emergency return. The laptop did not remain the only tool forever. Daniel's software was migrated carefully to newer equipment, validated, documented, and protected. But the old machine stayed in the room on a shelf beneath Lily's drawing, not as decoration, as memory. Vivian brought visitors there sometimes, especially executives who spoke too confidently about efficiency. She would point to the old laptop and say, That machine stopped a $70 million jet from leaving this hangar with a flaw everyone else missed. The first time Daniel heard her say it, he raised an eyebrow. You make it sound dramatic, he said. It was dramatic. It was data. Data can be dramatic when it saves your company. He could not argue with that. Months after the incident, Daniel's system had already prevented 2 smaller failures before they reached clients. Heartline no longer treated quiet warnings as inconvenience. Vivian no longer used certainty as armor. When new executives visited and spoke too confidently about speed, she brought them to the diagnostics room, pointed to the old laptop beneath Lily's drawing, and told them the same sentence every time. That machine stopped a $70 million jet from leaving this hangar with a flaw everyone else missed. The first time Daniel heard her say it, he raised an eyebrow. You make it sound dramatic, he said. It was dramatic. It was data. Data can be dramatic when it saves your company. He could not argue with that. That evening, Daniel and Lily walked through Hangar 4. Other aircraft occupied the space now. Mechanics moved under bright lights. The floor smelled of fuel, metal, coffee, and work. Lily stopped beside the shelf where the old laptop sat. "Do you miss using it?" Daniel looked at the scratched lid, the tape mark, the missing hinge cover, the stubborn machine that had carried his knowledge through years when few people cared to ask. "Sometimes. Why keep it if the new computers work better?" He thought about Vivian laughing, Grant dismissing the trace, Lily lowering her head, the aircraft stopping before the runway, the tiny flaw behind the panel, and the way one old tool had forced an entire company to become less certain and more careful. Because it reminds people not to confuse new with right. Lily nodded. Or old with wrong. He smiled. Exactly. Across the hangar, Vivian watched them from her office window. She had a client demanding speed and a schedule bending under pressure. For a moment, old instincts rose. Push, promise, control the room. Then she looked at the shelf, the laptop, the drawing, and Daniel with Lily. She picked up the phone and told the client the truth. The aircraft would leave when the check was complete. Not before. Below her window, Daniel closed the old laptop gently. It had never been pretty. It had never looked powerful. It had never belonged in the kind of room where people trusted shine more than substance. But it had listened when everyone else wanted silence. And sometimes, that is all a hero really does at first. He listens. Then he proves what the world was too proud to hear.